Welcome to the Limitless Podcast. The Limitless Podcast is centered around exactly that, being limitless. Hunting, fishing, fitness, nutrition, adventure, disabilities. What may be covered during the Limitless Podcast will be, well, limitless. Stay tuned for this episode of the Limitless Podcast. Well, here we are. We've heard that before many times.
Many times.
Southwestern Oregon Limitless Podcast, Chasing Spring Turkeys 2024. This is episode 3 of the new podcast. And out of recognition of those companies that are supporting and promoting this podcast on behalf of this guy and this thing. Wow. I'm hope there's six
Episodes?
No, 6 companies that back this podcast, and they're all fantastic. So we have my mind just I've got stage fright. Holy cow.
I've had that before.
Yeah. So I have On Point Nutrition. I have Phelps Game Calls. I have Hunting Day Coffee. I have Wilderness Athlete. I have The Love Sauce. And I have, did I say Vortex?
Nope.
Vortex Optics. Those 6 great companies. Those listener codes are out there. Listen to episode 1 and or episode 2. You will find out what those listener codes are. If you go to the podcast description and or you go to the YouTube description, you'll find out what each company is offering as a discount. And that discount ranges from 10 to 25%. So with that covered, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about, this is my dad, my idol, the man that is the foundation of me being limitless and such a great outdoorsman, is Jack Ritter. Dad?
Should I speak?
Yeah.
Hi, y'all.
We are down in, should we tell them what town we're in? I think we
sure.
should. Yeah.
I think we should. Yeah.
Elkton, Oregon. We're less than an hour from the Pacific Ocean in southwestern, almost, it's not quite central.
4 hours south of Portland.
Yep. So when you're looking at that Pacific coast along Oregon, a little below central, the midline on that coastline for Oregon.
About 2 hours north of California.
Yeah, it's beautiful down here. Love the Oregon and Washington coast. Have not had so much action turkey hunting in one day ever in my entire life. And who would think that that would take place in this region, in this environment? I mean, we're talking about the coastal ranges of Oregon. That's just, when I say choked, I mean it's heavy deciduous timber with valleys that are full of oaks. Beautiful tributaries that have incredible salmon and steelhead runs, striped bass runs. In fact, we found out the Umpqua River is right down the road. And they consider the striped bass to be invasive here, so there's no size restriction and there is no limit to striped bass on the Umpqua River.
So if you're greedy, you could come here and make your dreams come true.
Yes, you could.
Yes, you could.
Yeah, you could. Come down here and stretch some lines, bend some rods.
Yep. The ones we've heard about reached 36 pounds. Biggest one I've heard of. Smaller ones are caught by the hundreds. Come on down.
Yeah, and we know a gentleman that you could book a fishing guide with if you're so inclined.
That's right.
Happened to be the same gentleman that hosted us on our turkey hunt.
Fine man.
So, little over a year ago, so 11 months ago, my dad booked a hunt with this gentleman. Came down. So it was May. He came down May of last year, 2023. Had a great experience. Had so much fun that Dad reached out to me, said, "Hey, I'd really, really like to do this with you." My mom had joined him, and they found an Airbnb. What river is directly behind us? Do you know?
The Umpqua River.
That's the Umpqua down there as well. I thought it turned a fork and that was different. So you may not be able to hear it through our mics, but sitting here, we can hear the rushing water of the Umpqua behind us. It's about not quite a half mile away, and they raved about it. So we went to the Portland Sporting Expo in February, shook hands with Jody, and we made plans for a hunt. And here we are. We're staying at the exact same Airbnb. I'm a little reluctant to throw the name of the Airbnb out because I wouldn't want it to be booked up the next time we want to come.
Yeah, don't tell them.
Yeah. So our Airbnb is a secret, but it's a really, really cool spot. And
There are motels in Sutherland, Oregon, which is about 30 miles south. And if you stay there, the guide will come and get you. He'll pick you up right at your motel.
so that guide is,
Jody Smith of Elkton, Oregon.
and that is the name of his guide service, Jody Smith Guide Service.
Highly recommend him. Probably the best turkey guide in the state.
And this region is loaded with Rios. So any listeners that are in regions that do not have Rios, and if Rios are on your checklist for filling a turkey tag, and you're gonna have to travel out of state and you're looking at throwing some cash at either airline tickets or potentially a guide service, and if you really, really want to have a good time, look up Jody Smith's Guide Service in Elkton, Oregon, and I promise you that you will have the time of your life out here.
Jody also guides for deer, for elk, and for all the varieties of fish in the river.
And out in the bay, down in Reedsport and Coos Bay as well, doesn't he?
He can truly add a lot of pleasure in your life, teach you a lot of things, give you some great experience.
So let's talk about this whole process for us. So we connected with Jody. Jody is not high tech at all. You can't get on his website and view his calendar, and you can't book and pay for your hunt through a website. If you want to hunt with Jody, you will email Jody and get in contact with him, and then you'll start working on dates, and he'll give you information on what's available, and or he'll let you know if the dates that you want are available. Yes, I know for some of you that's might seem a little inconvenient, a little behind the times, but the quality of the guide and interaction in the environment and your opportunity for success is well worth doing it Jody's way.
I want to add just a small line in there. If you want to hunt with Jody, you must make your reservation at least a year in advance. At the Sportsman Show in February this year, he was booked up every day for 6 weeks with multiple hunters sometimes on some days. He had no openings. He was taking no reservations at the show unless you wanted to reserve a time for next year, 2025.
And he has folks that have been coming out here for over a decade with him. He has a gentleman, so season opened on the 15th, and he has a gentleman that has booked him on the 15th for, is it 8 years straight or 15 years straight?
Oh, way more than 8.
He's been booking opening day for a long time with Jody. That gentleman shows up for the hunt because he's already paid him the previous year, and while he's here for the hunt that day, he pays Jody for the following year. So you can't hunt turkeys with Jody Smith on opening day because that's booked by the same gentleman year after year after year. We were very fortunate to slip in this year on the second and third day of opening season.
That we booked a year ago.
Yes. But even though it's, for some, you might think that's a little antiquated considering you can typically get on somebody's website and look at calendars and availability. I am aware of several guides in several different aspects of the outdoor industry that you're not able to see their calendar. You have to interact with them individually. Jody is one of those guys. He's a Christian man. He is a pleasure to be around. He is safe. He is committed to the success of his clients. Provides a great atmosphere. He was willing to share his coffee. Not that we needed it. We all rolled into the truck with individual thermoses, but he offered coffee. He had snacks for us. He had
water and drinks.
Water and soda pop and jerky and other snacks.
And Jody knows turkeys better than the turkeys themselves.
He has
That's
done
a
this.
fact.
He has done the scouting. He knows their patterns, and we can go to different locations at different times of the day, and he has an idea of where they're going to be and what their habits are, where they're wanting to go at that period of time of the day, and he has an idea of how and where we're going to set up. It was a lot of fun. So we drove down here taking our time, had a little bit of a road trip with Mom, got down here to the ranch / Airbnb, and settled in and had dinner, prepped gear, got all staged. Jody started texting, letting us know what time he was going to pick us up, to verify that we had our license and tags. And he showed up about 10 minutes early, and we kicked the day off by jumping in the truck, grabbing hands, having a prayer. Dad prayed for a safe and successful hunt, and then we hit the turkey woods.
Yes, we did.
And
no messing around.
No. Jody knew right where we were going, and we are actually hunting on a neighboring ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And
First stop.
Pulled into the driveway, parked the truck, walked maybe 100 yards or so down behind the barn. It
maybe a bit more than that.
I think 150. It was a short walk.
Yeah.
It was.
You're younger. It was a long walk for me.
It was a dark walk. Jody had a red headlamp on. Dad and I did not have any headlamps, and he had a blind set up at the edge of a oak, a great big, not an oak thicket, a stand of oaks, and the blind was set up right against a massive old oak, overlooking this big, beautiful field down in the valley. It's got to be a half-mile long and about a quarter-mile wide.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful field. And we were really quiet walking in. There was no talking.
Mm-hmm.
And Jody reached down and started pulling on the zipper of that blind. And 3 turkeys blew out of the oak tree that blind was under. They had roosted in the same tree that that right above our blind.
I almost wet myself. Can I say that on camera?
You absolutely can. Yeah, Jody turned around and looked at us with this smile on his face, and he whispers, "What are the odds of that happening?" I'm laughing, shaking my head. It's like, holy cow. This is either going to be really bad, like those are the only 3 turkeys that are roosted.
Back home, that's what we would have thought.
Yeah.
We would not see another turkey all
Yep.
day.
If you were hunting clickitat,
Yeah.
it's just walk back to the truck.
That was your last chance.
Yeah. So Dad and I crawled into the blind, got settled. Jody walked out about 15 yards or so in front of the blind, and he put a single hen and a strutting tom, both avian decoys. And then he laid down
Tell them that strutting tom had a natural turkey tail, not the synthetic.
That's correct. Yep, he had a fan from last year stuck in that tom, and he had a log pile set up behind the blind. So he laid down in this pile of logs, and then we just settled in, waiting for the sun to come up.
Yeah, we did.
And we were in that blind probably 40 minutes before first light.
Well, at least. Yeah.
And an owl all the way at the east end of this field cranked off right when the sun started to break. I don't know if Dad could hear it. I did
not hear it.
I had my hearing aids cranked as sensitive as they could get, and I heard this owl. It hooted 3 times. All the way down the end of this field.
I would have heard it if you hadn't been breathing so hard.
And a tom fired off.
I heard that.
And when that tom fired off, in an oak tree not 20 yards from us, 4 more turkeys started gobbling. I just started laughing. When you think about, okay, we snuck down to that blind and 3 birds blew out of the tree. It's like, well, there's either a whole lot more or those were the only birds that
And the
were
gobblers stayed there.
And the four gobblers stayed there. And so we sat there from very first light until those birds decided they were going to come out of the roost, and it was quite some time.
Yeah, it was.
And those birds gobbled their heads off. We heard them spit and drum from the tree.
How many other toms did we hear?
Probably 9 or so.
Yeah, it was a lot.
All over, from one end of that field to the other.
For a half an hour, we're listening to turkeys talk and toms gobble, looking at each other, laughing, smiling, can't believe this is happening.
When those 4 birds came out of the roost, they flew straight down on top of that decoy and ganged up on him like 4 seniors on a freshman.
Yep, they did.
They just hammered it.
Yeah, they tarnished its reputation.
They pulled it off the stake, turned it over sideways. They strutted all around it, and then they just took turns jumping on top of it, just having their turn. It was hilarious. Yep. That went on for the better part of an hour, nonstop gobbling. And 2 other birds came out of the roost behind us, but they went back behind us. We never did get to see them. Jody couldn't move. He was pinned down.
Caught.
Yeah, he was pinned down. And so that went on for quite a while, and then they wandered off. They decided they were going to go for a mosey, and some cows came in through the oaks behind us. And so Jody sent a text from his log jam that he was going to, he's like, I'm going to go reset those decoys. And then he walked up to the barn and jumped on a 4-wheeler, and he went and put hay out in other areas to try to pull the cows from on top of us, or he was going to have to pull the decoys.
I just wonder how many of your friends have had that experience. It's happened to me too many times that I pick a good place to set up, so I come back the next time to hunt, and I set up, and I make a call, and in a few minutes, cows start drifting in. I've had them come all the way up and smell my boots. And when you spook them, there goes all your birds. They make a racket when they leave.
So I haven't had a problem with cows turkey hunting. I have problems when I'm hunting in Texas with Chris Dunlap. Every time I go hunt with Chris on the 4J, the cows migrate to whatever setup I'm in.
Yep.
And they push all the game out.
They'll do it.
Jody has a problem with the cows. If they see decoys, they go mill around the decoys. They sniff them, they lick them, they knock them over. They create havoc, and if you don't move them off, then you're not going to see birds. But so he went out on his hay run and left us alone. Told us to do a little bit of calling, and so we commenced calling. And we'll talk about.
What call did you use?
You want to talk about that right now?
I want you to.
Well, I used a couple.
There. Talk about that one.
I used a couple. You want me to talk about this one? So this was the call of the day. This is my favorite call. This was a gift from my father.
Yes, it was. That was my first Bill Boblet call.
So Bill Boblet is a Washington turkey call maker. He makes small batch handmade calls. He makes box calls. He makes pot calls.
Mm-hmm.
He makes what is the they're not what is the other call that he makes? It's a mouth call.
Mouth yelper.
It is a tube call?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them. So this very nondescript little box call here, and this thing sings a magic tune that I have yet to find a turkey that doesn't want to talk back to it. I just absolutely love this call. So this is what I used for the majority of the day yesterday. The other...
I'm just showing them how plain mine is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Aaron's got the fancy one. That was my first one, and I liked it so much, and I called in several birds with it. So I gave it to Aaron, and my Boblet call is a little newer than his, not much, but it's just as good wherever I take it. I very seldom ever fail to get an answer to it.
It's great calls. Bob's a super nice guy. You can email him or call him on the phone, and he will talk
Bill,
to you.
not
Bill.
Bob.
Bill. He also does an annual turkey contest.
Mm-hmm.
This year it's changed. It used to be the biggest bird.
Biggest beard, biggest spurs.
And then they would also go up. They have weight information there as well. And he would have more than one winner. He would have the grand prize winner, but they would have runner-ups. This year he's doing, he's changed it to where anybody that uses his call,
Mm-hmm.
if you submit a success picture, then your name goes in a hat for a drawing, and he's doing a couple of drawings this year. So everybody has an opportunity. He was finding that, there's some folks that live in regions or states that they just naturally have bigger birds.
That's
It's kind of
right.
like if you're in a national online bass fishing competition, it's really hard to beat dudes from Florida because they have
Big bass
monster
down there.
largemouth bass, right? So they typically there's a point handicap there. They get knocked a certain amount of points off or pounds,
I have a
right?
prime example. One year, I was in Bill's contest. I shot a 27-pound tom, and it had maybe a 9.5-inch beard and spurs about a half-inch long. Because at click-a-tat, they get worn down. They step on their beards and break them. I don't know if it's a food source problem or what, but their beards are really brittle. So there was no chance that I was ever going to win that contest to get against areas in the United States that have better birds.
So this year, it's if you shoot a turkey using his calls, your name goes in the hat and you go in for a drawing.
Yep.
And Dad and I were both successful yesterday, which we're going to get into that story again. We both used his box calls for most of the day. I also used the Phelps came out with a couple of new diaphragms this year. The Rain series by Mr. Parrish. Really like them. The Pawn diaphragm. I love it. I'm using 5 diaphragm calls from Phelps this year. I have 3 of the Rains. I have the Easy Clucker and I have the Green Viper. But this guy right here, the Pawn, I just really love how it sounds. So I was using that a little bit yesterday in certain scenarios. And then also the Phelps Meat Eater Slate call. I really like this call. It's a little bit on the quieter side. But it has beautiful tones on it. I really like this, especially if they're in the roost. In my opinion, I think this is a really good call to use when they're in the roost, or if they're a little bit closer and you can still work a pot call. I really like using this call for that. It's not a good locator call. It's not a really loud pot call. So those were those were the 3 calls that I used yesterday. I had a couple other calls with me. I had a dead end glass call with me, but I never pulled it out of the vest. And I only took 1 striker yesterday. I'm a long ways from home for this hunt. I didn't bring a turkey vest. I was wearing a backpack, and I was anticipating that Jody was going to do all the calling yesterday. I took calls with me just because I'm a turkey hunter, and I almost feel naked if I go hunting and I don't have a turkey call with me.
I wore a turkey vest because I would feel naked without it as a turkey hunter. So I kind of poo-poo the idea of a backpack for a turkey hunt.
He also didn't have to fly to hunt. But
This is
anyhow,
true.
we're splitting hairs, and neither one of us have a whole lot of hair to split.
No, it's true.
But I took 1 striker with me, and this striker was given to me by my father as well. It was one of his favorite strikers, and so I had this striker with me, and that's what we had for our call inventory yesterday. And Jody ended up not doing a lot of calling, left that to us, and
we called a little
bit.
A couple of our setups he called.
And we actually had a great amount of success with the limited amount of calling tools that we took with us yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I will throw this out there in referencing the fact that we did the majority of the calling. Jody will 100% do all the calling if either one, that's what you want or need. But he also gauges you as a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the ability to call and or the desire to call, and it works into the success equation of your hunt, then he will provide you the opportunity to do some calling.
It's true.
And I truly enjoyed and appreciated that yesterday.
Yep.
All right, so we went down the call rabbit hole. So we're back at the blind, and those 4 jakes ended up coming back. We heard so many other toms. None of the other birds came in. We saw a couple of hens come through, but no other toms came in. So Jody decided he wanted to shift and move somewhere else. I think we were all kind of ready to get out of the blind.
Mm-hmm.
Dad and I aren't huge fans of sitting in a blind anyhow, but we knew that was probably the greatest chance of success if we wanted to be sitting next to each other and watch each other shoot birds. We knew that was going to be our best option. So we adjusted, and we drove up the road. We drove out of the farm, and we drove down the road to go to a couple of other properties. And in our travel, in an upper field on the same property, we saw a bunch of birds.
Mm-hmm.
So Jody drove down to a safe location, did a U-turn. We came back. We drove back down into the barnyard. We got out, grabbed a couple of ground chairs and the decoys, and we walked back up to where Jody had these birds patterned. He said, hopefully this doesn't take that long. He said, but we're going to set the decoys up right here. And he said they're going to walk right, they're going to come over from that open field, they're going to come into the oaks through this thicket, and they're going to go right out this gate that's over here. And so he set us up right inside that gate, put the decoys out, and then he went back down towards the farmhouse in the lower field. And we sat down together. We started calling.
I got to pick my own chair.
You did.
I did, and I picked the wrong one. It happens.
The chair necessities.
If you're young and you like to hunt out of chairs or want to, our chairs sat maybe 4 to 6 inches from the ground, and they had a back. And I sat down in that chair, and it was pretty comfortable for 5 minutes. And then it got really uncomfortable for how long? An hour, hour and a half?
No, we sat there for almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. Yep. I do not recommend that chair for someone over 75 because I am well over that.
I had a little bit different experience. I thought my chair was pretty comfortable, but I'm 30 years younger than my father, so it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But we hadn't been in those chairs 15 minutes, and 2 hens came through.
That's the first time I've ever hunted out of a chair of any kind.
Is it?
Yeah, I've always just sit on the ground, lean against a tree.
Yeah, I find them really comfortable. But hens came through within 15 minutes, and then outside influences started. We were near a road. We were within visual of a road.
50 yards.
And it's not we're out in the middle of nowhere. It's farm country, but there was a couple and their dog that decided they needed to go for a stroll yesterday, and they were walking down the road. Jody had been calling, I'd been calling. The hens had come in through the thicket. We never saw them leave. And this couple, obviously were not, they might live in this timbered area out here in the middle of nowhere, but they were not outdoors people. They saw the decoys. They thought they were live turkeys. The man puts his pointer finger on his Adam's apple and starts trying to
gobble like a turkey.
Trying to at the turkey. And the woman was convinced that they were real. They started to walk past them a little bit.
Well, he was doing the chicken dance.
He did that too.
He was turning around. He thought he was a turkey, and he was.
It was pretty funny. And then they realized that they weren't real, and then they started the debate on why somebody would have turkey statues out in the brush. And then they saw at least one of us, and then their voices elevated, and the man started to express his disgust with the fact that he was embarrassed and that he had tried to tell her that those weren't real turkeys to begin with. And then they walked back the way they had come. And when they turned and started walking back, that's when Dad saw the 2 hens they went back in the direction that they'd come.
Exit, stage left.
Hadn't seen the toms yet, hadn't heard toms yet. So I text Jody and said, "Hey Jody, the gig's up. This hunt's over. We just had people walk down the road. They started gobbling and dancing in the road, doing their thing. The hens pushed back the way they came. Pretty sure this hunt's over." And Jody said, "Sit where you're at. I'm gonna go drive down the road and see if I can see those toms out there in that field and see if they're still around." And so he drove down the road. Jody didn't come back, but he sent me a text message. He said the toms are there, and they've headed your way. Just hold tight for a little bit. Start doing some calling. He specifically said, hit that box call you have a little bit.
That Bill Boblet call that he really liked the sound of.
Yes. He liked this box call so much, he may have comped my hunt if I would have given it to him.
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
This man, Jody Smith, has over 30 years of guiding experience, particularly for turkeys. And he's heard a lot of calls. He gets a lot of calls from makers. And he heard this Bill Boblet call and wants one. So he's going to be talking to Bill and getting a call.
I've shared the website with Jody today.
Yeah, well, He'll have one. These are really good calls.
So Jody sent a text and said, "Hey, just hit that box call a little bit." So Dad and I sat there and I commenced to working the call and hit the diaphragm a little bit, but mainly worked that box call. And that's when the vocals started coming. Toms started gobbling. Hens came in. It sounded like they were going to go behind us and pass us. And the hens, we were getting the hens fired up.
Yeah.
And then the mailman came. The mailman drove down the road, and it just,
Who says lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place? What a liar.
and it's just, all the vocals just ended.
Yep. They turned around and started going back where they came from.
So we let the mailman, you know, he drove by us, but he was already driving down the gravel side of this little road that we were 50 yards off of. And then, you know, he pulled over and, you know, banging mailboxes around, and then took off down the road.
This is a short road.
It's
only got like 3 houses on it, and the mailman went by us, and there's only one other thing that's going to happen. He's going to turn around and come back.
And he did.
And he did.
Yep. So, you know, that got the birds a little bit nervous and shut them down. And so we knew, I mean, we're on the dead end road. So we just sat in silence and waited because we knew he was coming back. And it was in, you know, he was in an older minivan. It was not efficient, like economically fuel-wise. A little bit noisy. And so we waited for him to go. And then we just we sat there for a couple of minutes, and I smacked another call.
Yep.
And it started that fire again.
Yep.
So started getting those hens worked up again. And they're getting closer, but holy cow, talk about standing in the kitchen watching water, waiting for it to boil, or waiting for paint to dry, I should say. Holy cow. And they're getting closer, and I'm sitting in my ground chair. My dad's to the left of me, and to the left of my dad, within probably poking an elbow out, is another great big oak.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there, I've got my gun in my lap, and I have the box call within reach in the grass, and I have my phone tucked up underneath my leg because Jody is sending me play-by-play via text message what's going on with these birds. So we had a spotter, which was 100% key to success, because I probably would have got up and walked away. I didn't think they were going to come.
Yeah, it was about time to leave.
But Jody, he's like, hey, they're coming. They're taking their time. Hey, they're coming. And we could hear them, but they weren't coming. And then it sounded like they were starting to get a little bit closer again. Here comes another truck, an old, probably a mid-'80s two-wheel drive, single cab Toyota pickup. Again, this vehicle had seen some miles, and he drove down the road, stopped,
saw the decoy,
started to back up, and then he stopped, and then he kept going. So again, all brakes, all stop. Everything went quiet. All right. Are we going to recover from this one? Well, we did. Started hitting the box call again. And
I actually had to pick the box call up and hand it to you. I was afraid you weren't going to call.
I was going to let it soak for a little bit.
Yep.
I was just going to let the woods be quiet for a little bit. But Dad picked up the box call and handed it to me. So I figured, well,
I know these things.
I may as well just let it rip. So I threw out some yelps, and they fired right back up. And finally, I started seeing birds. Unfortunately, Dad could not.
Picked the wrong chair.
And I sat there, and when we say pick the wrong chair, because we agreed that Dad was going to get the first shot.
Yeah.
Dad was the primary shooter yesterday morning. So I'm sitting there in absolute agony. I could have shot 4 different toms. They were all 4 really nice birds. There was one hen with them, and they were gobbling, and all 4 of them were strutting. They were putting on a show. And I just had to sit there and wait. And I kept whispering to Dad, you know, they kept doing, I think they were NASCAR fans, because every single one of those turkeys would fan out and strut to the left. They would all turn to the left. If one of them would have peeled and strutted to the right, it would have strutted right into your field of fire.
It would have.
That's all they needed to do. One of them needed to strut to the right.
Yep.
But they didn't. And then the biggest tom of the 4 and the hen, they walked at a little bit of a backward angle. They walked at enough angle to where Dad could not really see them until they got all the way over towards the fence line. And Dad's shooting a 410. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it put those birds out of his comfort range for that gun. And he couldn't get a shot off on that tom. The other 3 toms, they went, and that the tom and the hen, the tom took the hen back around the thicket towards the open field that thicket butted up against. So again, went back in the direction that they'd come. And those other 3 toms, they strutted and strutted and strutted, in my view, but outside of Dad's view and shooting lanes, for probably another 10 minutes or so. And then they went back towards the open field. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's over. There's been, between the walkers and all the vehicle activity, they just weren't going to come through. And additionally, Jody knew that we were that those birds were going to come through there, so he put the decoys there for us. And we think that maybe those decoys added to that environment, hung those birds up. It made them nervous and they didn't want to come through. So they peeled back and they went back towards that cleared field. And I'm texting Jody and I'm looking at Dad, and Jody's just like, just hold tight. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. And Dad and I both, we've been sitting there now for hour and 45 minutes almost.
Too long at those times.
It had been a long sit, and we were both ready to do something. And every instinct in me was saying, there's been too many factors, negative factors on this setup. Too many
interruptions.
Yep, that those birds, if they do end up passing us, they're going to go behind us down in the timber and come around behind us because they think that there's something wrong going on here. And I made a few more calls. Well, they circled around that thicket out in the field, regrouped, and then they came back down the fence line.
Yeah.
But when they came back in, there was no strutting.
But there was gobbling.
But they were on edge. All of their body language was, something's not quite right here. But they were determined to get through there. So that's when it really got interesting.
Yeah.
What was it from your view?
Oak tree on my left, too much brush in front of me. That was mostly my view. Occasionally, when the turkey's walking, his head's going up and down. And when his head came up, I could see a portion of the head, but I couldn't tell if it was a gobbler or if it was a jake or how big it was, or get a clear shot at enough of its neck. I mean, there wasn't enough to shoot at for the ones that might have been within my range. And once they went too far to my right, they were going farther away all the time. And I could not turn to follow them. So that's what happened.
Dad was set up we're both right-handed shooters. Mm-hmm. Dad had the perfect shot scenario when they came through the thicket to the left. He had a really good opening, had the birds he would have had a bird between 15 and 30 yards, which is great for his 410. I really didn't have a great shot. I'm shooting a 20 gauge, which I'm a little more confident shooting through some foliage, especially at 30 yards or less. Where I was set up, even the decoy being 20, 25 yards from me, I could only see the head and the top of the fan of the decoy. I could barely see the hen. So I was looking at pretty limited shooting lanes. When the birds came from out of the thicket the last time, where I was positioned, I could see them, and I could see the size and quality of the birds. I knew that all 4 birds were shooters. and I knew where the hen was at. Dad didn't have that same visual that I did. So as they're coming in front of us, I had my gun up, and I kept whichever bird would and the first two birds were bouncing back and forth between lead birds. So I just kept adjusting my red dot to the head of the lead bird through the brush. And I'm whispering to Dad, "Shoot a turkey. Are you gonna shoot?" And he's got his gun up, and I'm watching him out of my peripherals, and I can see him adjust, and I can just tell when my dad settled into that. He nestles into that good shooting position, and I'm thinking, here it comes, and there was no shot. and the turkeys start moving again, and so I adjust I'm trying to keep that red dot on that lead turkey because I wanted to hit the trigger as soon as his 410 went off, and no shots are happening. I'm like, "Dad, shoot a turkey. Dad, are you gonna shoot? Dad, are you gonna shoot?" And then the turkeys move, so I watch my dad just try to quietly and slowly adjust in that little chair to try to adjust his hold, and every step of the way there's no shot going off, and now the birds are all the way over. Now they're at the decoy.
His whisper was getting louder every time he spoke. I swear those toms were deaf.
It really, they talk about if you can get birds focused on a decoy, that you can get away with quite a bit of action around them because they get so intent on that decoy. Now, I think guys talk about that in the sense of when they key in on a decoy and they're strutting, and maybe they're going to either get aggressive with that decoy or they move around and try to cut the space off between the decoy and a hen decoy. But these birds were locked onto those decoys because they weren't comfortable with those decoys. All of their body language was, "We don't like this."
I think it was the hen. When they got up to the hen, they started getting a little freaky.
Is that what you think it was?
Yeah. She wasn't moving. They were walking right past her.
Yeah. Well, this is just transcending into no shots going off. My whisper was getting louder and louder. It's like, Dad, shoot a turkey. Dad, are you gonna shoot a turkey? And it was getting to the point to where I'm like, one of us is gonna fill a tag here. Jody wanted us to try to get a double, and you can watch by their posturing that at any point they were probably going to take off at a run. One of those toms jumped. There was a log on the backside of those decoys.
He committed suicide.
One of those toms jumped up on top of that log and completely pulled himself out of the bushes, silhouetted himself, and then he extended that head and neck up as high as he could potentially get it. He was like, "I want to get a really good view of what's going around here," and it was 100% a fatal mistake. I gave Dad one more, "Dad, are you gonna shoot, Dad?" And there was no shot, so I just leveled him.
You did.
Took him right off that log. And so there was 5 birds. I dumped the one off the log. 3 of them ran back towards the clearing. The other one blew through the gate and then hung up. So Dad, I put my gun on safe. Dad hands me the box call, and I start working this box call again. He starts gobbling his head off.
He's going to come back.
And we thought that he was going to come back, but Jody had heard the gun go off, and he drove back down and pulled into the barnyard, and it ran that bird off. But that was our morning experience. That was our morning setup. 2 setups, one
Two
shot
crazy
went off.
experiences.
It was nuts. So the other interesting thing is, so I'm shooting a Rite 20 gauge Masamara. And
How do you spell that?
Well, Dad, it's almost like I don't know if it's French, Israeli. I ought to look the
Retey.
That's Rite. That's the name of the manufacturer. The model of the gun is the Masamara. It's Masai Mara, Mara. It's a really nice 20 gauge auto. It's super light. It's fast. And
Give
it's
them a profile.
it's proving to be a really nice deadly gun. I put a rail on it with the Vortex Spark. I'm a huge Vortex fan. May or may not be one of the reasons why they're sponsoring the show. I rattle canned the stock. When I bought this gun, it was a black synthetic stock, flat black finish. I rattle canned the stock myself. I put a Jebs Headhunter 560 choke on it. I had a gunsmith on the Eastern Shore Cerakote it for me. And I shoot TSS loads by Aaron Satterfield, Sadie's Fatties. Highly recommend that you check out Sadie's Fatties. I shoot a 2 3/4 inch number 9, 1 5 ounce TSS loads. At 20 yards with this gun, I'm cutting a silver dollar hole through a target. And at 40 yards, I have over 17 pellets in the head and neck of a turkey. And this thing is just an absolute pleasure to shoot.
That's that TSS heavier than lead shot.
It's amazing.
Yeah, devastating.
Absolutely amazing. So check out Sadie's Fatties. I love the guy. Great dude. He hand loads every shell that he makes. They're family owned, 100% quality control. But don't try to order shells once it's turkey season. He's swamped. So that's the rundown on this gun. That was we tagged that bird and regrouped and rolled down the road to try to get Dad a bird.
We did.
So where'd we go from there?
Well, you've already told them that I'm shooting a 410, so I might as well show them my gun. It's a Mossberg SA 410. And it has a Carlson choke that came with the gun. And for a 410, I've shot a 410 since I was 11. That was my first Winchester Model 42 pump 410. And I hunted with it for a lot of years. This little gun with its TSS shot gives patterns that are unbelievably tight for a 410. It would kill a turkey at 40 yards. I do not want to shoot that far with it. Last year I shot one at 35 in Klickitat, and with Jody I shot one at 20. And we used a tail fan to walk across a field and wiggle that fan and draw the turkeys right to us, and I killed it at 20 yards. It's a great little gun. Weighs about 5 pounds. Easy for me to carry. I have 2 complete shoulder replacements, and the surgeon suggested that I don't shoot a heavy recoil. So I sold my 12 and went to a 410. That's the story.
I think it's a cool little gun. I'm looking forward to hunting with it a little bit as well.
Maybe I'll let you touch it.
So we tagged my bird and hit the road in pursuit of a bird for Dad. And we went to a couple of other spots, and it culminated in we found some birds over on property that Jody has access to, and they were up on the top end of a field above an old cemetery. And this is an old small cemetery, probably like 20 yards by 20 yards small.
Oh, maybe 20 yards by 10 yards.
I thought it was square. I didn't see that it was rectangular.
No.
And again, Jody spends a lot of time scouting, preparing, patterning birds. And we looked at the setup, and he said, if you guys get over this fence and crawl up on the hill, just don't break the contour line and set up on that oak. He said those turkeys are going to walk right down this ditch on your left side, and they're going to cross the fence right off to your left. And so Dad and I he dumped us there, drove down the road, and again set up in a spotting position. And he told me, he's like, Aaron, he said, I don't think you even need to call. This is their habit. They come through here every single afternoon. And so I put Dad on the big oak, and then I dropped back down to the fence and went about 40-ish yards and went back up the hill. There was another great big oak on the other side of this ditch, and an oak deadfall. And I wanted to set up there and film Dad. So I went and I got set up, and it looked really good when I was standing next to the oak with Dad getting set up. But once I crossed over and looked at all the angles, I was afraid that if the birds went wide over towards my side, that it would impede Dad's ability to shoot without thinking he was going to send pellets in my face.
I thought of that. It was also too far, so I wouldn't have shot.
So the birds hadn't come yet, so I readjusted and I dropped back down the hill a little bit, and I got out of all of his shooting lanes at that point. And I had just settled in, and I got a text message from Jody that said, hey, the birds have broke right. They're going to the far right side of the cemetery. You guys need to adjust over, go to the far right fence post at the cemetery. So I grabbed my backpack and I dropped back down the hill, ran across, went back up the hill. Dad's looking at me like, what?
Crazy man.
What are you doing?
Busting my setup.
Gosh. And it's like, Jody said they're coming down on the right side. We've got to get over there. And I'm showing Dad, it's like that far right fence post. We got to get to there. So I didn't know my dad could get up this fast. He was up on 2 feet, and we started moving.
I'm old, but I'm not crippled.
From the oak tree
I got 2 legs.
over to the fence post. And we got 20 yards from that oak tree, and Dad's looking at the fence post. I'm behind him. I've got a hand on his shoulder, and I turn around and I look back in the direction where we thought the turkeys were going to come, and there were 4 red heads sticking up over that contour line. We were out in the middle of the grass. We were busted. We were 100% busted, and so we just froze.
Yes, we did.
We just froze. They're looking at us. We're looking at them.
That's a good girl.
And
go on, honey.
And it was a standoff. It was a standoff, and we were looking at them. They were looking at us, and then they just started feeding.
That's funny, isn't it?
They just started feeding, and so through this staring process, whenever all 4 birds were either looking at the ground or looking back in a different direction, when Dad would start to squat a little bit, I'd squat with him, and I was standing right behind him, and they finally just started feeding, and Dad slowly went down to a knee and went prone, and I followed him. So now
I think that was a pretty good lesson for you, wasn't it?
Dad, it was.
I'm glad I got to teach you that.
It was great. And again, we're wide out in the open. And now these birds, we can see full profiles of the birds up above us. I'm laying directly, I'm 12 inches from the soles of my dad's boots. and the birds start coming down this ditch. And Dad just slowly adjusts the gun, and we've seen all 4 birds. He knows what each bird is. There's no other birds with him. And they're coming down, and Dad gets a open shot at a bird and dumps one right there.
In the open.
Wide out in the open. It was nuts.
Bird was in the open. We were in the open. Yeah.
They all 4 knew we were
there.
there.
Then what happened? This is worse.
Well, what happened?
Well, laid there, you don't want to spook them. You don't want them to see you. So we laid there while they beat up on the one that I had shot. And that went on for a few minutes, and I got tired of laying there. I was getting a sore neck. So I started getting up, and we actually stood up right in the open. We're 30 yards from these birds, and they kept attacking the one on the ground,
Oh yeah.
not paying hardly any attention to us at all. They'd look at us, and they'd go back and jump on that bird. It was really funny.
And they didn't start running back uphill until you started walking down to go
Yeah.
retrieve that bird.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were
Had to get it over with.
they were putting and clucking, and
Oh, it was funny.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
great.
it was hilarious.
Another good experience. 3 really good turkey experiences.
Yeah. It was such a great day. We told jokes. We probably poked fun at each other a little bit. We
I think we
laughed.
did.
We prayed. We didn't stop really to eat. We hunted hard all day.
We did.
Yep. Tagged birds. It was just really cool. So this area that we're in, very, very small mountain communities. The town of Elkton has, when we say it has a store,
It does.
the store has more fishing tackle than it does food. Does have a little Greasy Spoon restaurant.
Now
on
that's
it.
a really nice restaurant. Serves really good home style food. This is a farm community.
When I say Greasy Spoon, meaning it's
Small.
a small, locally owned little restaurant that
Yeah.
serves great food. They're open from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon.
Yep, breakfast and lunch.
It does have a bar attached to it, so you can go in and have a beer in the afternoon if you want. But then the store has, they've got a beverage cooler, they have an ice cream cooler, and some honey buns.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about the extent of it.
They have some kitchen supplies so that people don't have to go 30 miles away to the closest town. But they're in another room. I didn't see them.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it for Elkton. We did see turkeys in Elkton. Saw a couple of really nice gobblers in Elkton.
Yeah, walking right around on the city properties.
Yep. And then today we drove down to Reedsport, Oregon, which Mom and Dad and I, we've all drove through Reedsport. But we went down into Reedsport and we had lunch, and we bought coffees at a local shop. And Mom went to a spinning store and bought some
Yeah, a yarn shop.
bought some material to spin and knit with. And we saw.
So we have a good turkey yarn, and she's got a good yarn. Isn't that nice?
That is great, Dad.
Yeah.
Well played. There was a chainsaw carving shop
Mm-hmm.
on Main Street that was open. Chainsaws running. So we wandered over to the chainsaw carving store. We went in the store first. There were two people, a man and a woman, out in the carving area running saws. And we went into the storefront. And the storefront had a young lady and 4 guys in there. They were cooking breakfast in the shop. We looked at all of their.
She was cooking. They were eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing the piano, chatting, laughing, having some social time. We looked at all the stuff, and then we walked out and we crossed over to the carving area. And Ellen Keeland put her saw down and walked over and started engaging with us. And I'm not sure how long Ellen has been walking the earth, how long she'd been in Reedsport.
Is Ellen going to see this podcast?
I don't know.
If Ellen sees this podcast, I'm going to say she's maybe 45 or 50.
There you go.
Yeah,
There
just
you go.
in case she's watching. I think I'm in love with Ellen.
She's been around long enough to have some great stories, and she has developed an incredible personality. And she happens to be a published writer, along with being a very talented wood carver with a chainsaw. And
Did you break wind?
no, I did
Why
not.
is that buzzard hanging around us?
I thought it was because you were so old, he was waiting for you to stop moving. So Ellen,
Thank you, son.
Ellen was married to, so it's right on the cover, a World War II Marine, a logger and resort owner. And this book is full of 207 short stories about her husband and their life and activities and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gave me a book. She signed it, and we spent probably 30 minutes chatting with Ellen.
Yeah, we did.
She was born in California. She went to Southern Maryland to St. Mary's for college, graduated with a bachelor's, and then she moved back to the West Coast and ended up in Reedsport with her husband. And she's now a widow, and just a lot of fun to chat with. And she has given me permission to read short stories from her book on the podcast if and when I wish. So I'm thinking that from now on Wednesday episodes, I'm probably just going to start from the front of this book, and I'm going to read a short story every time we do a podcast. So that's coming in the future. It's a Loon Lake Lloyd by Ellen Keelan. Really cool. But if you do travel out here to hunt with Jody, would strongly recommend that you try to factor in a little bit of time to continue the about 40-minute drive down to the Pacific Ocean and check out Reedsport, or maybe even drop down a little bit further into Coos Bay. And support the local economies down there, grab some food, great seafood, Pacific Ocean seafood, I should say, and just gather in a little bit more of the beauty that's down here.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a really nice trip.
On this trip, we have seen turkeys a lot. A lot of turkeys.
Every time we get in the car and drive any distance at all, we see toms.
Yep. So, ton of turkeys. We've seen black-tailed deer. We've seen Roosevelt elk.
Yes, we have.
We have seen osprey. We saw a harrier hawk.
Red-tail.
Red-tail hawk. A ton of quail.
Seen a few geese and ducks in the pond here on the ranch.
Myriad of waterfowl. It's just been a great trip. We were hoping to see turkey, deer, and elk, so we got that trifecta out of the way.
Yes, we did.
What else happened on this trip? So we talked about, it was the first time Dad and I have ever been on a decoy setup and watched birds come in and just pound a decoy.
That was a first.
That was a first for both of us.
It's the second time in my life that I got to be with you and watch you shoot a turkey.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Because when we hunt together, we don't normally hunt together. We drive somewhere and then we split up and then we meet back at the car. And so if one of us or both of us have a bird, the other one didn't get to see the shot.
It's the first time that I've been with you when you've shot a turkey.
That's correct.
We've had a couple of almosts.
Yep.
But that was the first time that I've been sitting right next to you when you've shot a bird.
Yep.
So that was really cool. It's the second time in my life that I've walked out in the dark to set up for a hunt and had birds in the tree that I was setting up under. I hunted with a gentleman by the name of Steve Smith in Southern Maryland. The last time that I hunted with Steve Smith, he and I settled in at the base of an oak. And when turkeys started talking, there were birds in the tree that we were leaned up against. That's the last time that I had the opportunity to hunt turkeys with Steve Smith. The first time that I've hunted turkeys with Jody Smith, there were turkeys in the oak tree that we were supposed to hunt under. How interesting is that?
That is.
That just doesn't happen.
This was a hunt with a lot of situations that don't normally happen, or it's like a once-in-a-lifetime hunt. This could happen to you. You come and hunt with Jody Smith, and he's going to put you in more turkeys than you could imagine.
Folks that have heard me speak or interacted with me outside of the Limitless podcast, you know that I'm a very active, focused hunter that loves the do-it-yourself aspect of hunting.
So do I.
I prefer to be in the backcountry. Some might say that I like to do it the hard way. I tend to shy away from guided hunts or guided fishing trips. I like ownership of what's happening with my hunt and my potential success. And I will tell you that I will be returning to hunt with my father and Jody Smith. I enjoyed it that much. And for what a person will spend to travel out here to Oregon for a Rio and have just overall a 5-star experience in the environment that you're hunting in. If you come alone, you're going to have a good time with Jody. Come with a family member or a friend, you are going to have the most excellent adventure out here. Turkey hunting with Jody Smith out of Elkton for a Rio.
Very good.
Yep, 5-star recommendation across the board.
Very good.
Is there anything else we want to talk about?
There is not, except that I'll probably be shooting Satties Fatties next year myself.
We're having those conversations with Aaron Satterfield. They've already started before we started recording this podcast. We're going to see how those 410 shells, how devastating they are out of Dad's 410 probably next season.
That's right.
Right on. All right, Dad. Well,
nice keeping company with you.
Dad, be limitless.
Same to you.